Hey everyone, Tony D and Little Joan here, and we're doing a hot take, a Twitter hot take. Apparently, and this is on the women's march, and just some general political stuff. Because when I promote Wokistan, I try to promote it to people who support Trump because I feel like they would like the book. I mean, I think everybody would like the book, but I think, um, as far as the social justice warriors and Antifa excesses are concerned, that the Trump followers seem to be a little more in tune with those excesses. So I don't know if you could see it here, but there's a Bernie Sanders tweet. It says 3 years ago, the Women's March told America and the entire world we will not accept the divisiveness, racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, or religious bigotry of Donald Trump. Thank you to the thousands of women continuing to march and speak up and show up. First off, I think that's a huge overstatement. Um, it's the Women's March. I would understand if you went after Trump for his misogyny, let's say. That makes sense. But to roll in all this other stuff, which isn't true, what religious bigotry you're gonna say? Oh well, he's against Muslims. I don't see that. I don't see that. The uh, the attempts to you know ban people from flying to certain countries or give them additional screenings. I mean, you know, that that didn't target people who are Muslim. It targeted people from those countries, and it didn't target all Muslims. It certainly didn't target Americans. I mean, look, I'm a libertarian. I think there's way too much surveillance, and I think they can't even sort through all the information they collect on people. But to accuse Donald Trump specifically as if he's the cause of all this is really simplistic and stupid. But so he's talking about this women's march, and then right above it is Elijah from Slightly Offensive, if you've ever seen that channel. And this is about the women's march in LA, which I don't know if it's the same one that Bernie's referring to. But Elijah says these young girls, no older than 11, screamed at the Women's March in LA. And here's what they said. I don't know if you can hear it. So, I don't know if you heard it. They're saying F Donald Trump. And Elijah says vulgarities, visuals of bloody reproductive organs, one woman boasting about her ninth abortion, and pro socialism communism groups were all present at this event. Um, I, you know, I consider myself a person who was fine with women being treated like as equals. I live in New Jersey, a place where abortions are free and easy. But, again, it all comes back to the left side of politics needing limits. And this is what Jordan Peterson points out, and what a few other people of the intellectual dark web. There's just no limits anymore. And the people on the progressive side of politics aren't willing to say, okay, you can have an abortion up until, a month before or something. Like, no, there are these people who say, no, it's perfectly fine to have an abortion on the day your baby should be born. That to me is extreme. And I've talked to other people and asked them about that because there was that law. I think it was in, let's say, Virginia, that they tried to pass, which would have allowed you to, according to the law, abort the baby. Like, you go in to have the baby and you decide you don't want it, and then you can abort it. Which really, at that point, you're killing a baby. I mean, you can't deny that. If the baby's about to be born and you abort it, you are killing an actual baby that could exist outside the womb. And again, I don't have anything against women who they get pregnant, it's an accident, and they're not ready. They want to go have they take the morning after pill, or maybe a few months go by and they get an abortion, but that seems it seems too far. It just seems too far. At that point, I think you should really say, well, I'll have the baby, I'll give it up for adoption. Like, tons of people want babies, and it's easy to give a baby up for adoption. I mean, so I don't see any reason for someone to abort a baby in the last month of the pregnancy. Um, and again, as a libertarian, I don't want the government involved in any of this. I think, but there is what you believe in terms of society, and then there's what's legal. And I think part of the problem too is there are too many people, especially on the left side of politics, some on the right, that want to legislate morality. They want to legislate ethics. Like, if you want your young daughters to go to a march and shout obscenities about the president, that's legal. I don't think it's very smart. I don't think it's very nice. Um, you know, I didn't like George W. Bush, but shouting obscenities at him doesn't really do anything, and it's rude, and I think it teaches a poor lesson to your kids. I think involving kids in politics at that early an age is really, really crossing a line. You really should not involve children in very serious matters of state. There are already too many people in this country that don't vote. If you want to do something about that, then you should, go ahead and contact your friends and neighbors who don't vote, or start a movement to get more people to vote. So it's and this idea that Trump is just the devil incarnate. I saw some of that back in the Bush days too, and there was smart ways to protest, and then there are dumb ways. This is a dumb way because this turns people away. It makes people uncomfortable. It doesn't bring people to your side, and it indicates that the people on that side actually don't have any ideas. They're not interested in bringing people onto their side. They're just interested in being seen as wonderful people who are on the right side, and in fact, they don't want to bring people to their side. They just want to poo-poo the people who aren't on their side, in my view. So yeah, this is what you get when you Google Donald Trump, and you just get a sea of all kinds of interesting stuff. Here's another one about the Women's March in NYC. People showed up in the cold to speak out. Hey ho, Donald Trump has to go. Women's March again. Donald Trump is. You can definitely chastise him for some of his behavior towards women, but he is a political person who politically doesn't really care. He doesn't really care whether or not it's a woman in the job. He's hired women. He's fired women. He has women in his campaign. That's just simply not acknowledged by the rivals, and and again, it doesn't mean what he's done is great. It just means that to scream at them, scream at him so relentlessly against him, it just doesn't make any sense. Here's another one from the Daily Beast. No, that's a lot of Women's March things on Donald Trump. Looks like forever impeach Donald Trump has triggered another march against fascism and misogyny. This is from Kimberly Johnson. HuffPost and the Start Me Up podcast. I don't know what that is. But again, that seems to be an overstatement. It's this, against fascism. Donald Trump doesn't represent fascism. He just doesn't. He was elected president. He was elected legally. He doesn't shoot his political rivals. He doesn't believe in political violence. I've seen no evidence of that. Um, yes, you can argue that he says very angry things that rile people up, but he didn't commit the violence. He doesn't. I don't think you can say he does that purposely to incite violence. Um, I mean, maybe you could say it, but I'm not seeing the Donald Trump side, and I hate to call it the right side because there's a lot of complex. It's more complex than left and right, but it seems to me that there are a tremendous amount of people on the left side of politics that are perfectly fine with any kind of political violence so long as it gets them what they want. And there are some people on the right side of politics that are okay with some violence, it seems. But it's kind of hard to judge that too because we have a media that's so relentlessly for the left side, and because they've spun things in favor of the left side of politics for the most part, they tend to constantly play down the violence on the left and constantly play up the violence on the right. So you have this situation in which the constant reporting of violence on the right means that people who could commit violence on the right tend not to commit it because they have to think twice about it and realize, oh, I'll lose my job, I'll be called out, I'll be arrested, I'll get a larger sentence or whatever. Whereas, and because of that, so there's less people who eventually commit the violence, but because you have sort of this cover for Antifa and other groups, they are more likely to commit violence because they think, well, there's really no consequence here, and it's no big deal. It's no big deal. I saw a video, and I don't think I could find it, but it was on Twitter of, a group of people who were mad at, I guess, a journalist. It was somebody with a camera. Definitely somebody not on the left, because the people yelling were leftists and Antifa members. But there was a guy on a bike, and he just ran up to the guy, excuse me, and hit him right in front of the cops. Now, thankfully, the cops ran over and arrested him, but he was astonished that he was being arrested. Like, he couldn't believe it. Like, he was like, well, that guy's a fascist. Like, you can't arrest me. I'm hitting a fascist. There's nothing wrong with that. But even if you believe that, that's not the way the law works. And so his astonishment is surprising. Like, when you're that far down the rabbit hole that you would, just punch somebody casually in the face because, oh, there's Barack Obama, because it's all kinds of crazy pictures. That you would punch somebody in the face because, you disagree with them politically. It's just an outrage. You should not commit violence. Violence is something that is only reserved for self-defense in this country. If you don't know that or you disagree with that, go to one of these other countries where violence is more the norm. Go to Saudi Arabia, where they have culture police that monitor things, and they'll hit you with a baton, no problem, and they're allowed to. Go to a third world corrupt country where the cops can run amok and beat the crap out of you. There was a little of that going on in the 70s, and that's why a lot of movies came out in the 70s about that. Late 60s stuff. It was cops. They'd run amok. Even now, I heard of a story. A group of comic book guys I know. They said, yeah, and they were knuckleheads. They were out cruising Philadelphia to score some pot, and they ended up picking up a hooker. So the story goes. She led them to where they were selling some pot out of the back of a gas station, and the place got raided. They pulled them into a paddy wagon, left their car, drove them For those of you not familiar with the area, it drove them to the Riverview Theater area. And if you don't know that area, there's a big overpass there for Route 95 in Philadelphia. It's a movie theater, but the overpass there's a big, gigantic parking lot, goes on for blocks, and it's just usually empty. Well, he took them to an empty, dark part of the parking lot and just beat the crap out of them, and just left them there. Just left them there, all beaten, bloodied, and then took off. Told them, "Don't ever come to North Philly again." Well, they had to go back to North Philly to get their car, which they did, but that's the kind of thing cops, I guess they probably still do if they can get away with, but they used to do all the time. That was, it's a gang mentality, like, stay out of our part of the town. We don't want to have to arrest you, or, don't do this again. And I certainly do not advocate that, but, this is the sort of thing that drives negativity. It drove negativity towards the cops, and it's driving negativity towards the left. So if you embrace political violence, my suggestion to you is think twice about doing it. You're just hurting your side, and you're not winning any friends.